Hi, and welcome to the Pink Movement podcast with your host, Christy Collier. Each episode, you'll hear from some awesome people in and around the breast cancer world, sharing their wisdom on all things health and well-being. You'll hear simple information, practical advice, and useful tips to help you stress less, move more, and feel better.
Please note that this podcast contains general information only and should not be treated as medical advice. Hi everyone, it's Christy Collier here again, and thanks for joining me on episode 15 of the Pink Movement podcast. Before we get into things today, I have a very small favour to ask. If you could take a minute out of your day today to pop over to iTunes and provide a rating and review of this podcast. In doing that, it helps the podcast be found more easily, which means other women just like you can find and access the information you need. So thanks. Now, today's episode is all about one of my favourite things, food, or more specifically, food and nutrition following a breast cancer diagnosis. I'm chatting with accredited dietitian and oncology nutrition expert, Emma Slee. Emma shares with us so much information in this episode. You will learn all about oncology nutrition, what it is and what it can do, all about the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating and what a typical day looks like following those guidelines. Emma shares with us if there's anything we should and shouldn't be eating following a breast cancer diagnosis. She also provides advice on weight loss and weight gain. And then she answers tricky questions around things like supplements, superfoods, going organic, and food safety. And last but not least, she shares with us how and where to find an accredited practicing dietitian to work with you if you want to during your cancer treatment. Now, although there is tons in this episode, if you've got a specific topic relating to nutrition you'd like to hear about on the podcast, please just drop me an email to christy@thepinkmovement.com.au. I can't stress enough how much great information is in this episode, ladies. It's an absolute must listen. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Emma Slee believes in the value of using medical nutrition therapy to help patients through their cancer journey. Emma has significant dietetic experience in many cancers and has spent the majority of her career working as a clinical dietitian in the area of oncology. Completing her qualifications, a Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and a postgraduate diploma in dietetics in 2007, Emma commenced work at St John of God Hospital in Subiaco, providing care to oncology patients during their hospital admission. Emma now works with specialised nutrition care, where she provides individualised nutrition care to patients who are well enough to be at home. Here to talk to us today on the topic of what I should eat following a breast cancer diagnosis, please welcome to the podcast, Emma Slee.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks so much for having me today. It's a great opportunity to speak to you and your listeners about nutrition, which is an area I'm just very passionate about, especially in the area of oncology.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Now, let's just ask you that question. How did you get into oncology nutrition?
Well, I guess like many people, my family was touched by cancer, so I have quite a few relatives who've struggled with it. So it's been an area that I've always been interested in, and being a dietitian, I wanted to know what I could do to help people that were going through this. Obviously being, when you're a carer for someone, food is a really big role of that. So knowing what I could do to help really sparked my interest.
Okay, and I suppose just for the benefit of our listeners, what exactly is oncology nutrition?
So oncology nutrition is just what to be eating when you have cancer, and that can be, it can cover from a preventative point of view, what to eat to prevent getting cancer, also throughout cancer treatment. So when you have cancer, if you've just been diagnosed with breast cancer, what can you be eating differently to get through the treatments that you may be having. And then it also fits in following treatment as well. So what you can do to help with recovery following any treatments that you've had, and also to prevent reoccurrence as well.
Okay, so it's really that specialised nutrition care and advice for cancer patients, and really in that preventative treatment and recovery space.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, so I suppose what we wanted to talk to you about here today, Emma, is obviously the listeners of the podcast are women who have had a breast cancer diagnosis. And one of the big questions we hear is, what should I eat? So is it that I should go down the path of going fully organic? Should I be cutting things out of my diet? What should I do? So I wanted to talk to you today to help us probably dispel a couple of those myths and really just provide us with some advice around that question that we get a lot, which is, what should I eat? So I wondered if it would be worth us starting on giving a quick outline of, I suppose, just the current Australian dietary guidelines, because I assume they're relevant for those of us with a breast cancer diagnosis as well.
Absolutely. So you're right on track there. There's the biggest thing that when I see people who've been diagnosed with cancer is they just don't know what to eat. There's a lot of conflicting information out there on different diets to try, different foods that are good and bad. And the worst thing I see is when people are so confused and they just don't know what to do that they just stop eating altogether, which is really the worst thing that you can do. So the number one thing to do really is to just make sure you do keep eating. So there's not really going to be anything too much that you're going to eat that's going to be particularly harmful to your body. So just make sure you do keep eating is the number one sort of thing to start with, I guess, which sounds basic, but it can be really confusing and overwhelming when you get all that information. So I guess when you first get diagnosed, don't worry about diet to start with. Just keep eating what you usually do and focus on all the other things that you have to deal with at the start. And then I'd suggest when you've got your head around that, then really do look at nutrition, because there's a lot that you can do and control with diet. So with regards to the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, that's absolutely right. That what we recommend as a general rule people eat when they have cancer is just a good, well-balanced diet. So with nutrition during treatment, we're not aiming to cure cancer through diet or nutrition. So unfortunately, there's no miracle foods or no miracle diets that have been proven to cure cancer. What our aim is to provide a supportive role with diet. So to help you get through treatments that have been proven, so things like chemotherapy, radiotherapy or surgery, help you get through those, and good nutrition will really help with that. So as far as the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating goes, what that does is it breaks our diet down into 5 key food groups. Now, those food groups are high in different macronutrients, so carbohydrate, protein and fat, and different micronutrients, so things like our vitamins and minerals. So it's really important that we eat a balance from those 5 food groups, most days as much as we can. So with the 5 food groups, what they are, there's breads and cereals, so things like bread, rice, pasta, oats. There's fruit, vegetables, dairy, so milk or like cow's milk, yogurt, cheese, and the alternatives, so soy milk, and there's soy alternatives, and then meat and meat alternatives, so red meat, chicken, fish, or things like eggs, nuts, legumes, and lentils. So those food groups are all high in different nutrients, so it's really important that we include those in our daily diet. The problem with some diets is they do exclude whole food groups. So if there's any food group that you're not eating, then there's a good chance that you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs and not getting that balanced intake that you need for your body to thrive as much as it can. So what I would say is just be cautious of any diets that avoid any of those whole food groups. And also just to make sure that you are eating foods from each of those groups most days as much as you can. Now, it is okay to avoid some foods that either you don't like or you just would prefer not to eat, as long as you're adequately replacing them with something else high in those nutrients in that food group. So if you choose to go vegetarian and you don't want to eat any meat, that's absolutely fine. However, protein is very important, so is iron and B12, which are key nutrients from our meat and meat alternatives group. So important that you're still having things like eggs, nuts, legumes, lentils, tofu, so any of those alternatives. In addition to that, we have fats and oils, so they don't fit into one of those 5 food groups, but they're things that you can either add or leave out of your diet depending upon how your weight is going. So if you find that you're gaining weight and you're not wanting to gain weight, then be conscious of fats and oils, things like butter, avocado, nuts. These are very high in fats, all good fats, but ones that you don't want to overeat if you're gaining weight. On the alternative, if you're losing weight, then these are good things to add to our diet to boost our calorie intake.
Okay, and that's really interesting because those are 2 elements that are quite common when somebody goes through cancer, which is either weight gain or weight loss. So it's really interesting to hear how they can combat it, to help with that through nutrition.
Absolutely. So as much as you can, trying to maintain a healthy weight throughout treatment is really important. But just as a start, just maintaining your weight wherever that is one of the goals of nutrition throughout treatment. So if you're overweight, I wouldn't be aiming to lose weight during your treatment. The reason for that being is when you lose weight, when you're not eating well and you're not active, especially when you've got cancer, you don't just lose fat, which is the weight we want to lose, but you lose muscle as well. When you lose that, it can make you feel tired and lethargic and you just won't cope quite as well with your treatment. So aim to just keep your weight stable, and then when you're through your treatment, then focus on trying to get to that healthy body weight.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message, Emma, because weight gain certainly is a big one. I know especially for women who go through breast cancer, all the treatments and the medications and so on. And I think that's a really important message to our listeners that when you're going through treatment and you're having surgery and all the other bits and pieces, it's important that is not the time to go on a diet and try and lose weight. As you say, weight stability is the key and really sort of almost fueling your body with food to a degree by just having a really balanced and sensible diet. I mean, that's ultimately what we're aiming for, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And also, I think you just don't want to put that added pressure of trying to get to a really healthy body weight or lose weight when you've got everything else that you're dealing with during the treatments as well. So just don't overburden yourself or put too much stress on yourself. And, just focus on that healthy eating as much as possible. And if you do put on a few kilos over your treatment, that's really okay. You can something to look at following treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. All these things can be looked at later on down the track, I suppose. So looking at that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating is something that's available to everyone, and I will pop information from that up in the show notes, so if anybody's interested, they can go and have a look at that. I suppose, can you give us an example then maybe of what a typical day's food might look like following these guidelines for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, it's really good to have a look on the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating website, because what it does is it gives different examples of how much you should be eating from each of the different food groups each day to make up a balanced diet. And that will vary depending upon your gender, so if you're male or female, your age, and also your activity level, how much you should be eating from each of those food groups. But the good sort of guide to take away from it is the proportions that those food groups are making up in your diet each day. So as a rough sort of example, so to get about 8,000 kilojoules, which should be a sort of average adult's daily intake, then we'd be looking at having 6 serves from breads and cereals each day. A serve being about a slice of bread or 2/3 of a cup of cereal or half a cup of cooked rice or pasta. So really the bulk of our diet is our breads and cereals. We then have fruit, so two serves of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables, which I'm sure we've all heard of before. Go for 2 and 5. So a serve of fruit is about a medium-sized piece of fruit, like an apple or an orange. And our vegetables, so it's not having 5 different vegetables each day, it's referring to the quantity that you're having. So a serve of vegetables is considered half a cup of cooked vegetables or a cup of salad vegetables or half a medium-sized potato. Now that's a pretty difficult one to get in, and only about, I think it's less than 10% of Australian adults get their 2 fruit and 5 serves of vegetables each day, so quite a difficult one. Then with our meat or meat alternatives group, we need about 3 serves from that group a day. Now a serve is much less than I think what the average Australian tends to eat, so looking at red meat, a serve is just 65 grams.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's much less than what I put on my plate, I'm sure.
When you go out to a restaurant and you see a 250-gram steak, that's quite a lot more than our 3 serves that we're needing. So it's really not a lot. Alternatively, things like 2 eggs or half a cup of tofu or only 30 grams of nuts or seeds, which is just a small handful. Then from our milk and milk products, 2 or 3 serves a day. Now this is particularly important for women because it's important that we're getting adequate calcium to help prevent things like osteoporosis later on. So a serve being a cup of milk or 200 mils of yogurt or 2 slices, which is about 40 grams of cheese. Now from that food group, it really doesn't matter if you go for cow's milk or the soy alternatives. The main thing is that you're getting the calcium. So some of the alternatives, like, say, rice milk, aren't naturally high in calcium. So it's really important if you're choosing to have that as your main source of dairy that that it has been fortified with calcium. So you can just have a look on the nutrition information panel, which is on the side of all of our food products, and compare that to, say, 100 mils of cow's milk and see if it's got a similar amount of calcium. And then as far as going for the other question I often get with dairy is whether to go for full fat or reduced fat or skim. Now with that, the best thing I can say is I would just stick to exactly what you like to do. I wouldn't say one is better than another. However, I would say that if you're losing weight, go for a full fat dairy, and if you're gaining weight and you're not wanting to, then go for the reduced fat options. Now, how that could make up a daily intake, it sounds like a lot of food, but it's really not too much. Okay, so how a day could look. So for breakfast, that would be having 2/3 a cup of cereal or 1/4 of a cup of muesli or 2 Wheat Bix with a cup of milk or 200 mils of yogurt and a slice of toast. Then having a small snack at morning tea, so 3 crisp breads or crackers with some avocado, tomato and cucumber. And then for lunch, just a meat and salad sandwich, so 2 slices of bread, some meat, so just 65 grams of meat, a slice of cheese and a cup of salad, so plenty of lettuce, tomato, cucumber. In the afternoon, just a handful of dried fruit and nuts. And then for dinner, having some more protein, so whether that's half a chicken breast or a piece of fish, so 100 grams of fish, with some rice or pasta, so half a cup, a small potato or half a medium potato, and a cup of cooked vegetables. So making sure that our veggies are really providing the bulk of our meals. And then before bed, having a small snack, so half a cup of tinned fruit and a little bit of yogurt or custard, so about half a cup. Now that would provide all those food groups, so all those serves that we've just been through from each of those groups, and about 8,000 kilojoules a day.
Okay, so I mean, you make it sound pretty easy in how to incorporate all of those. I've got a very important question for you. Where does the chocolate fit into all of this?
So I guess chocolate is what we consider an extra food. So things like chocolate, chips, donuts, things like that, cakes, they don't fit into our food group because there's no key nutrients that they provide. However, they are a very enjoyable part of eating and life. I do like chocolate, so I won't tell you to not have any of that. With those extra foods, you can absolutely include them. Don't feel bad about including them, but it's not something that we want to be eating every day. And the thing you want to watch with them is if you're having them really regularly in your diet, then they may be replacing your intake of other more nutritious foods where you could be getting better nutrition from them, and they can provide excess calories as well. So my tip would be if you're going to have one of those sort of extra foods, go for really good quality. So with chocolate, go for a really good quality chocolate. Go for something that you really enjoy. And sit down and really enjoy it and make the most of it, and then don't snack on things later on in the day that you might not particularly enjoy anyway.
Good. So you've given us permission to eat chocolate, which is wonderful.
Yes, and don't feel bad about it. It's an important part of life. And, if you're going out and having those social catch-ups for birthdays or Christmas or anything like that, really important that you do enjoy your food, but that it's not something that you're doing every day.
Yeah, so look, as Elmo would say, they're sometimes foods.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that meal plan that you sort of just shared with us there, I will pop that into the show notes as well for our listeners so they can go on there and check it out. Now, what about, that's a really good, thorough explanation of those guidelines, what's included, and even an example day for us. What about, and I'll ask you a few specifics here in a minute, but is there anything specifically, when you're going through cancer that you should avoid, or anything specifically that you really should be eating? There's a lot of talk out there about things like superfoods and should you be eating tons of blueberries and kale and all this sort of stuff. Can you share with us anything our listeners should and shouldn't be eating?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as should be eating, as we said at the start, really the number one thing is just to eat and just eat. So it can be really difficult if you're undergoing treatments like chemotherapy or radiotherapy, which can give you symptoms like loss of appetite, or if you're getting a sore mouth or mouth ulcers, dry mouth. There's many symptoms that you can get that can make it really difficult to eat. So you get this double whammy where you're trying to do the best for your body and eat this really healthy diet, but you just don't feel like eating.
Yeah, or sometimes you just can't get it down, or there are lots of things that go on, yeah.
Absolutely. So when you're going through those struggles, the really important thing is that you just go for what you feel like, what you enjoy, and what you can get down. So, it's hard to see sometimes when people are struggling to get down like a green juice or a green smoothie because they feel like it's the best thing, but they're suffering from horrific nausea. And I think I shouldn't drink that anyway, even when I'm feeling good. So don't force yourself to eat anything that you just can't. If you really just feel like a piece of chocolate and you're going to enjoy it, look, eat it. Absolutely, that's fine.
Yeah. I know when I was going through chemotherapy, I had that metallic taste in my mouth, which I know a lot of people get. And for me, the only thing I could get down, it sounds very bizarre, were water ice blocks and Minties, and it must have been the taste and the texture of those things. And it sounds awful, but I lived on those things for a couple of days until that taste just went away from my mouth. And that's all I could really do.
Yeah, and the best thing to do is just make the most of the times that you're feeling better. So if you're going through a time where you've got bad symptoms and everything's metallic, look, just get through it. Just eat what you can. Eat the Minties or eat whatever you can get through. And then when those symptoms resolve and start to get better, really make the most of those days where you're feeling better. Try and eat really well on those. So don't feel at all that you've got to have this perfect diet every day of the week. You don't have to at all. I guess on that, so when you have got those symptoms, it can be a good thing to change how you look at food. So generally speaking, most of us eat because we enjoy eating. We like the taste of food, it's a really pleasurable experience. So when you get those symptoms and you lose your appetite, you just don't want to eat, it's really important to change how you're looking at food from doing it for enjoyment, but to do it because it nourishes your body, and food is medicine for your body, really. So sometimes that can help as well when you just can't sort of bear the sight of food.
Yeah, changing that mindset.
Yeah, as far as all those superfoods go, there's a lot of information on all those foods out there. Now, if you hear of a certain superfood that you want to eat, so whether it's kale or berries or whatever it is, absolutely fine to include, but do make sure that you've still got that healthy, balanced diet. So even though not all our foods are going to be superfoods, they are still going to have very beneficial properties. So so something like our berries have got lots of antioxidants, which is great, but they're not going to be high in protein, which is important for tissue growth and repair and recovery. So really important to get that balance still. Okay, so with regards with what not to eat, so like we've been through, not overdoing those sort of extra foods, so those things that are very high in fat and sugar but don't have very much nutritional value, they're good ones to not be eating or make up the basis of our diet. Fine to include, but just in moderation. And really there's not a lot else. Things to be cautious of are supplements, where you're getting very large doses of, say, vitamins and minerals, much more than what you could get from food, because sometimes that can interfere with the treatments that you're having. So I guess that's not food as such, but supplements, so people do sort of see them as similar. So if you are taking any sort of vitamin or mineral supplements, I would just run them by your oncologist first, just to make sure that they're not going to interfere with your treatment that you're having. And the other thing to be aware of is just food safety as well. So if you're having any treatments like chemotherapy, which can make you a bit immune compromised, you can be more susceptible to getting sick. So you just want to watch that you're not eating foods after their best before or use by date. And just being conscious of keeping perishable foods out at room temperature. So trying to keep things in the fridge or the freezer and not keeping them for too long.
Okay, so general food safety.
Yes.
What about, Emma, the notion of organic? Now, I know when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had a lot of people say to me, you are going to need to change everything and go organic because of all the chemicals that we have on our food. What do you say to that?
I think with organic versus non-organic, from sort of a nutrition point of view, organic and non-organic, there's no benefit of one over the other. So they have all got very similar sort of nutrient profiles. So from a nutrition point of view, you're not doing any better having one or the other. And then it's really a personal preference if you prefer to go for those organic foods because of how they've been grown or not. I wouldn't have any reservations myself, just eating regular fruits and vegetables. I think the main thing to focus on is just getting more. When we look at, not even 10% of Australians getting our 2 serves of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables a day, the best thing you could do for your health is to eat more fruits and vegetables, whether that's organic or not. Just eat more. That's going to have a much better impact on your health than just purely going for organic.
Yeah, so it's about health, and as you say, it's a personal preference, but you certainly don't have to go organic following a cancer diagnosis.
No, not at all. And the only concern with organic is just the cost. You have so many costs when you're undergoing treatment. Having another cost of, very expensive fruits and veggies can just be a bit much for people as well.
Yeah. And what about things like, I heard things like, people say to me, you need to go and drink this super berry juice, okay, and blue and whatever, and this is going to help you prevent cancer coming back. And you need to drink this amazing tea which comes from this country, and this has been shown to help prevent cancer. And you should really cut out red meat because red meat causes cancer. And I suppose there's a lot of just information out there that's probably not true that is floating around in the cancer world, in that nutrition space. So what do you suggest when we hear things like that?
It is really hard because I think the people that are telling you those things, they're wanting to help and they're wanting to do the right thing. And I guess a big thing that people can help with is food, and they've probably been trying to look into as much as they can with all those things. I guess with food, there hasn't been any food proven to cure cancer at all, unfortunately. So it's really just going for that balance. Yep. If there is a certain food or supplement or something that you particularly want to include, all I would suggest doing first is just run it by your oncologist to make sure it's not going to interfere with the treatment that you're having. And most oncologists are pretty open and have heard about most things and can tell you the background to it and whether there's any supporting evidence for it or not, because you want to make sure that everything you're doing is going to have a beneficial effect and you're not going to do anything that's going to contradict the other treatments that you're having. And the other thing to just be aware of is the cost as well. So a lot of the time they're not proven and they're very expensive as well.
Yeah,
I guess when people tell you those things, all you can do is say thank you for that, and I'll think about it, see if they've got any references or anything like that. But generally speaking, it's good to go for things that have been through sort of multiple reviews and things like that, not just a one-off case study, because diet is just so complex. It's very hard to just pull one thing out of our diet and say that's what's done it. We just don't know. Even one food itself is so complex in itself, it's very hard to say what may have caused that or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned there before, when people do say these things to you, they're normally coming from a place of care and wanting to help and have done some research and bits and pieces. I think sort of tying all this back in a bit, one of the good, I suppose, points we can take out of this is something that people do a lot for others with cancer when they're going through it is provide food. So it's one of the things we all know that we can do and that is actually helpful for someone. I think keeping in mind for those that do provide that help that it's really important too to try and, when you are giving that pot of food, that it is a really balanced, nutritious pot of food. It's great. The less that you have to cook, the better, obviously, but it's still, I suppose it's something they should keep in consideration too, because it will only help that person.
Absolutely. And it can be good when people are trying to give you this advice and tell you what to do, to tell them what they can do to help you, because people are just wanting to help. So where they're saying, look, the best thing you could do really is just cook me a dinner and this is what I feel like, and just tell them exactly what you feel like and what you don't like, because there's no point in them going to all the effort of making you a meal when it's going to be something that you just can't eat anyway because you can't tolerate red meat or whatever it is at that stage. So just be pretty honest and upfront, I think, and tell them what they can do.
Yeah. Good idea. Emma, are there any specific guidelines out there for our listeners, the women with a breast cancer diagnosis, around nutrition that they can get their hands on?
From all that we've been talking about with the Australian dietary guidelines and what to be eating and what not to be eating, there's some really good guidelines from the Breast Cancer Network Australia, which covers all this in really good depth and has really good information in it. So that's a really good reference that I would refer listeners onto if they're wanting more information or anything sort of written down that they can read through.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can provide a link to that in the show notes as well. And Emma, what about if our listeners are wanting to work, with a qualified nutritionist in their local area? Where's the best place for them to start? Where do they search? Is there a directory or something? Do they go to Australian Dietitians Association or where do they go?
Absolutely. So really important that you go into someone who's sort of qualified in the area. So I would suggest going to the Dietitians Association of Australia website, and on there you'll be able to find a link to an APD, which just means an Accredited Practicing Dietitian, so that they're accredited by the Dietitians Association of Australia. So that would be the best place to start, and you can search for someone who specialises in the area of oncology. And then it will come up with any sort of dietitians in your area that do cover that.
Okay, fantastic. That's a really great resource for our listeners should they want to have any sort of, I suppose, one-on-one consultation with somebody close by to them and ask sort of more questions and maybe even get some tailored or personalised plans to help them out.
Absolutely, because everything we're going through today are sort of general principles. But when you do meet with a dietitian, they may recommend something slightly different for you depending upon your needs. You know, we all have such different needs, even everyone undergoing cancer and cancer-related treatments, just because of how our body's handling it and the cancer type that we may have, the symptoms and side effects that we're getting. So if you do want specific advice, really good to go speak to a dietitian who can tell you exactly what you should be eating to meet your needs. The other thing, if you are having treatment anywhere, it can be good to just see if there's a dietitian in the healthcare team there who can help you as well. Most hospitals will have dietitians working there that you can see.
Fantastic. And now, Emma, I know you're working with specialised nutrition care over there in WA at the moment. So for anybody that is over your way and might like to work with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, so I just refer you onto our website, which is specialisednutritioncare.com.au. So there's myself working there, and I have two colleagues, Charlene and Tammy, and we're all experienced in the areas of oncology particularly. We also do gastroenterology and bariatrics as well. So love to see anyone who's over this way in Western Australia for a consultation. Alternatively, if there's someone somewhere else in Australia or any country patients, we can definitely organise a Skype consultation or a telephone call as well, if that's something that you would prefer to do. Okay,
fantastic. Okay, Emma, well, we've covered off so much today in that space of what should I eat and what can I eat. There's so much great information in there for our listeners. So thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us today and really share all of that information with us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I really do hope our listeners get a lot of value out of this podcast, as I know I have. So thank you so much for joining us today, Emma.
Thanks for that, Christy. It's been great to speak to you today and to the listeners as well. And I just want to really encourage anyone listening to just make any sort of positive change that you can to your diet. You don't have to go to big extremes, but any change that you can make, even if it's just having an extra serve of vegetables each day, is going to be good for your health.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Emma.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Pink Movement podcast. For episode notes, links and downloads, head to thepinkmovement.com.au. Like what you're hearing? Join our Facebook page, subscribe through iTunes, and while you're there, provide a quick review. Want to help out? You can support the ongoing production of this podcast by becoming a patron. Find all the details on the website. The Pink Movement Podcast, helping you to stress less, move more, and feel better.